Hi, I'm Cynthia Yuan, and in my political philosophy research, we talked about the most significant Greek philosophers in the ancient times. So Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. And we examined a few of their works: Apology, Republic, Nicomachean Ethics, just to name a few. And in each chapter, we talked about the summary and two paragraphs. One is the one that I like, and one is the one that I dislike, and I'll present the reasons. But here, in regards to time, I'll only talk about the summary of each chapter. To begin with, I'll talk about Euthyphro. Euthyphro, Euthyphro is a person, and Euthyphro and Socrates met at the court of King's Archon. So Meletus accused Socrates of corrupting young shoots and inventor of new gods, which basically means impious, and that's why Socrates at the court here. Well, Euthyphro's at the court because he wanted to prosecute his father of murder. Thereby, this lead to a debate over piety with Socrates. Next, follow with apology. So Meletus, Anytus, and Lincoln accused Socrates of being impious, and Socrates explained about the accusations and defend himself against Meletus. So he present his opinion on death and virtue, finally. And next follows Crito. So Crito is a friend of Socrates, and he tried to persuade Socrates to escape because in the last chapter, Apology, Socrates was sentenced to death penalty by Athenians, and Crito just want him to be alive. And Socrates thinks escape is not virtuous, so he refused Crito's proposal and says that do not act injustice upon injustice. The most important theme in this chapter is about government and citizenship, but at last, Crito is convinced by Socrates. Then followed the fatal death scene. So Phaedo of Elis, who is narrator, is speaking to Echecrates, and friends of Socrates gather in his cell for the last few hours. And that concludes the 4 chapters about Socrates' last few days, which is a major historical event in history, and it's documented by Plato. Next, I'll talk about Republic, which is also by Plato. So in book 1, Socrates and other friends got invited to Polemarchus' house, and thereby begins a discussion about justice. And justice is the most important theme that appear in the Republic. So Cephalus, who's the elder of Athens, says that speaking the truth and paying whatever debts one has incurred is justice. And his son Polemarchus says it is just to give to each other what is owed to him. But for both opinions, Socrates argue that they are not the most correct one. And in the later on in the later of the chapter, Thrasymachus interrupts the conversation angrily and says, "Justice is nothing other than what is advantageous for the stronger." So for this point, Socrates didn't give a clear answer to this. So in book 2, Glaucon suggests human nature inclines us toward injustice, but the law forces us to behave justly. So Glaucon is another friend of Socrates, and Glaucon also tells the story of Gyges' ring to support his point. Adeimantus says that it's merely appearance of justice that is praised. So to explain more and to argue back, Socrates there introduced the idea of city. The idea of city is what the republic is built on. So this city is defined to be a perfect, utopian, idealistic city. So Socrates described to Adeimantus the education or cultivating guardians in the city. So the guardians are the most important people in the city. They are the rulers, they are the philosophers, and they are the kings. And these are the people who possess the following qualities: philosophic, spirited, swift, and strong. And he believed that appropriate story and musical and physical training um are for the education of guardians. And he also introduced classification of citizens by three metals. So the guardians are the gold one, the auxiliaries are the silver one, and the other people are the bronze one. This is a myth, but he thinks that it's very important to introduce this to citizens to better rule them. The reason of this I will talk about in later books. So Socrates says the goal of city is not to make one group happy at the expense of another. So he thinks that the ruler are not the happiest one, nor the other people are the happiest one. It's every people together to be the happiest. And he thinks that justice lies in each person performing his own role properly. So this ties us back to the myth in the previous book. So he basically want everyone to do their job and not to do things that don't belong to them, or not to do the jobs that they're not familiar with. So he thinks that the classification of people, can help them to identify what types of person they are, therefore doing their job properly. And at last, he talked about three parts of soul: emotional part, rational part, and the desire part. In book 5, Socrates explained about the problem of gender, and he says both gender possess same distribution of qualities. And he also says in his ideal city, traditional family are abolished, and the city is the family. He also suggests that best people should have more children, but this obviously opposes the modern opinion. But he thinks that is somehow true back in his time. And then he thinks that philosophers, or people who love truth and knowledge, not just the appearance, are the ruler of the city. So he argues that philosophers should be ruling, and then he complains that they're not in a good environment now. So in Athens, philosophers like Socrates are not the most praised one, and they are strongly undermined. So Nicomachean Ethics, which I will go into now, is by Aristotle, and Aristotle is Plato's student, so many of his ideas are borrowed from Plato, but he presents his different idea too. So Nicomachean ethics by all means is, in contrast to politics, it's more about personal well-being. It's more about having a just mindset. It's about having happiness. So book 1, he talks about many things. I will select a few that are most important to talk about. So his first point: things achievable by action have some end that we wish for because of itself. So he thinks that everything has its ultimate form, and only doing the ultimate form is gonna be good because it covers all of the other things. And he also objects Plato's understanding of the universals. So even though he's the student, but he also objects some ideas of his teacher. And his point 8, 9, 10 is about happiness and external factors. So here he acknowledged that external factors can indeed act upon a person's happiness level. And then his last point is virtues of thoughts, virtues of character is very important for a person's inner harmony. So I will talk about his another piece, politics. So politics is more about community. It's more about examining how people are functioning together. So first he introduced city-state, which is I think that is prior to household. It is the end. And he also says that justice is the organization of political community. And he examined three questions: mastership, martial science, and procreative science. And he talks about the role of slaves and role of masters, which he thinks that some people are natural frees and some people are natural slaves, which is contradict to our modern ideas. And then here he talks about the commerce and household management. So he thinks that commerce is like wealth acquisition, which has no limit, while household management has some sort of limit there. And here he talks about different people have different amount of virtue. And he also explore a little bit about the role of family members, such as a husband and wife, and children and parents. Here I will go back to Nicomachean Ethics, but I'll go back to book 8, which is about friendship. So friendship he defines as a virtue and necessity of life and a bond between different people. It is a reciprocated goodwill and it has three types. So first is friendship for utility, second is friendship for pleasure, and the third is complete friendship. So the complete friendship can only happen in good people. If there's a pair of bad people, they can only have the first two types of friendship. And he says that one cannot have too many or too little true friends. By this, he means that if you're gonna have a friend, you're gonna give the friend your attention, or you're gonna give them some gifts. So a person cannot have that much energy to be able to manage that many friendship. And he talks about, which I think is the most important point, that friendship is more about love. Uh, friendship is more about loving more than being loved. So here he talks about trying to pay back in friendship is enough. So he's says about reciprocated goodwill is that you have to give to someone something and they have to give back to you. So you have to give and you have to receive. But if you don't have that much ability to give that much, just to give what you think is enough. So book 9, he talks about friends changing. So if a person is no longer your friend, you should not talk about bad things behind their back, because just remember the good memories of you and your previous friend is enough. You don't have to talk bad things about them. That is, well, not just and not virtuous. And he says friendship exists between the person and themselves. So a person have to be friend with themselves first in order to be friend with other people. So here he also talks about goodwill, which is an active form of friendship. So if two people only have goodwill for each other but don't show them, this is an active form of friendship. And so in his point 9, a happy person needs friends too. This is leading us back to point 4, that if a person have no friend but only himself, can he just stay that way? Well, he give the answer is no, because every good person have this sort of need to give. So you have to give to other people things, and you can't always be with yourself. That would be um way too way too that'll be way too narcissistic in a way to say. And his last point is friends enjoy staying together. So only good people, according to him, have this complete friendship, and complete friendship lead to this statement that friendship enjoys staying together, enjoy each other company. And that concludes the Nicomachean Ethics, Book 9, which also conclude my political philosophy research as well.